The individuals who've been identified have been put on administrative leave, and beyond that, I would prefer not to go further, but I will tell you that we are going to look at this. We're going to find out what the culpability was, and we'll take the appropriate action.
Thank you. Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from District of Columbia for 5 minutes. Ms. Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that you so quickly accepted responsibility, Mr. Sullivan. That's what we expect from a great police force, and that's what the Secret Service is, and that's more than the Salahis have done, who continue to indicate they were invited even in the face of the evidence and our no-show at this hearing where they could have explained themselves fully as you are doing today. You indicated earlier in your testimony, I think I'm quoting you, no others entered. But how did you discover that the Salahis had entered? Did you discover it through their Facebook, or was it your own discovery that some interlopers had entered?
We did not discover that on our own. We were advised of it the following day.
And advised by whom, sir?
The Facebook.
So for all we know, there were other interlopers there, because this mistake was made. These con artists, so hungry for publicity, exposed and revealed themselves. You see the danger I'm speaking of, sir.
Ma'am, that was a concern of mine as well. That is something we have focused on. I cannot talk about it in this setting, but I believe that I can satisfy you in explaining that there were no other people there that night that should not.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to be satisfied to that in private. I was at the state dinner. Once you got through that checkpoint, I don't know how you could say to this committee you were sure that no others got in, especially since we have a precedent for someone who did get in. So I think the committee has to know how they can assure us that there were no other interlopers. For all the twittering about the social secretary and these serial con artists, what I see is that this couple has pioneered a new way to breach security. Forget about all your barriers. Forget about your IDs. Be a poseur. That'll get you in quicker than anything else. And then I'll tell you what my concern is, Mr. Sullivan. It is well known, it's been in the press over and over again, that this president has received far more death threats than any president in the history of the United States, an alarming number of death threats. I'm not going to ask you for the details on that. But here we had the first state dinner, not of just any old president, but of the first African-American president. Was there any attempt to increase security, given all you know, which is much more than we know, about threats to this president of the United States?
No matter who the president is.
I'm asking about this president. And my question is very specific. Given death threats to this president, was there any attempt to increase the security at this event? Yes or no?
Ma'am, I can't talk about that. I'd be more. Number one, I will address the threats. I've heard a number out there that the threat is up by 400%. I'm not sure where that.
Is it up at all? We don't asking for the threat. No.
Well, I think I can answer you, ma'am. It isn't at 400%, and I'm not sure where that number came from, but I can.
Well, please don't.
Just a minute. Well, we can't hear, gentlemen.
Please don't assign to me a number in my question. I just asked you if the threats were up. Are the threats up or not, Mr. Sullivan?
They are not. The threats right now in the inappropriate interest that we're seeing is the same level as it has been for the previous two presidents at this point.
This is very comforting news. Let me ask you, reportedly there were as many as 3 or 4 times as many people at this state dinner. It had to be held in a tent-like building. Is that not the case?
I believe there were 400 people. Yes, ma'am, there are more.
And they're normally about 100, 120 people.
Correct.
Did you have extra forces, extra people on the ground to assist you with this state dinner?
Yes, ma'am. We will always adjust our security plan depending upon the...
Were there extra people, given the fact that there were 3 or 4 times as many people at this state dinner?
Yes, there would.
Where would you have gotten them from? I ask you that because a recent internal report of the Congressional